And hello, movie lovers. Today, I actually have a very good friend of mine. I have my friend Luke. He's from the Galaxies of Geeks YouTube channel, and we're going to be talking about Ant-Man Quantumania. This is a very divided film. Some of us may not feel the same way we do, but all movies are subjective. So let's go on ahead. Let's get on with the review. And hey, Luke, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. That intro is it just gets you pumped.
It does. It definitely does. And what better way to just do an intro like this with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, right?
Yeah, this will probably be it. Marvel in general has been a interesting animal recently, and so this one is a continuation of that.
Most definitely, because I'm going to be honest with you, the only one that I was actually happy with was the last Black Panther movie. Was like the only one that I really stuck out to me. I didn't really like Thor: Love and Thunder. I didn't, and everybody will see that review and everything if you guys go to the channel or listen to the podcast. But I also didn't like Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, and I was going in with the expectations of okay, so for me, they're 3 for 2. So I was hoping that this would actually be 2 for 3. And this is a big miss for me. As a Marvel fan,
Ooh.
like I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it, but it didn't deliver on the aspect of what I saw in the trailers and the promise that they gave us in the trailer. Because
Oh, they
like you
lied to
us,
us in the trailer.
yeah. What was that?
They lied to us in the trailer. They literally in the trailer they make it seem like Scott's going to actually work with Kang to get time back with his daughter, and they never do that in the movie.
No, and that was one of the things I was hoping for because in the trailer I'm like, oh, they made a deal. Like this is like a deal with the devil, basically, where where we actually have Kang promising Scott extra time with his daughter that he got taken away from him 5 years ago. Like, okay, I like that aspect, and I'm sold on that aspect. And then whenever you find out Kang is hiring him to do a job that basically he could do himself, it just didn't make sense to me in that kind of aspect to hire Scott to do this.
It was honestly the movie was messy. It was wanting to make do a lot of big things. They wanted to dive into the quantum verse, which or quantum realm, and it. I understand why they did it, but I think in the meantime they made the movie very big but very messy. They didn't have a great plot. You weren't really connected to the characters that you needed to be connected to, like the fact that it was Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the Wasp probably had less lines than anyone in the movie.
Right. She was basically just there in the background as like a supporting cast. Like, okay, Scott, I'm on this journey with you. If you need me, I'll be back for the finale. I'm gonna go over to Starbucks real quick, and then we'll just hop on later. But it just didn't feel like it felt like an Ant-Man movie, but at the same time, it was very messy. I didn't. I like the introduction of Scott walking down the street, and of course, you have that "Welcome Back, Carter" song, which I thought was hilarious at the very beginning of it. And I'm like, okay, I'm sold on this. I don't see what the big problem is. This is the same thing I expect from every single Ant-Man movie. And then once you get into it and how they get sucked into the quantum realm, I was sold on. But then once you get into the realm of the whole entire quantum realm, that's whenever it starts falling
Well,
apart.
well, the thing is, I felt like in this movie, I have the same problem with this movie as I do with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. If the events it After the events of this movie, nothing really changes in the MCU. There's no real change. If they never went to the quantum realm, the same outcome would come about the MCU basically. Because if they never went to the quantum realm, Kang's not getting out. So Kang's still there and he's still trapped. So he's not going to be affecting anything. And then once they get out, there's really no consequences to their actions. There's no growth of the characters. Scott's the same character as when he went into the movie. It's really unconsequential, especially. But the sad part is you're trying to start phase 5 with this movie. I didn't feel like the problem is there's no definitive into phase 4, into phase 5, normally you can kind of see that definitive break between the phases. There is no definitive break with this, what's going on.
Right. Usually you have character arcs after a certain event's actually done, and Scott's just the same old guy. He's over there buying a cake for his daughter, and it's supposed to be this Baskin Robbins bit that they did. That they do this with every Ant-Man movie to the point where it's like, okay, I get it. It's not, and it doesn't become that funny after you wind up doing it over and over again. And I'm with you though. Once you get into the quantum realm and everything, and also too with Kang, he doesn't really do much. Even whenever you look at the whole entire aspect of the fact that you're trying to set up this new phase, like you mentioned, and there's no consequences with Kang. There's no big battle. If you think about it, it just seems very lacklustering and it falls flat. Under that, it's like, okay, it just becomes like a generic movie whenever it's supposed to be this big, huge event setting up this phase, and it just falls flat on its face to me.
Well, I think the main issue with this movie is it had too many. It was trying to be an Ant-Man movie and something more. So I think Peyton Reed was overwhelmed with this movie. You felt his DNA throughout the movie, but his DNA really does not lead to a Avengers level movie. That's not his style. And so because of that, I think you see those issues throughout the movie. You kept trying to he could not get this like impressiveness from Kang. You got that from Kang himself, from the actor, because he played a good role, but he didn't, the story didn't help Kang. It was all the actor, but they kind of made this Kang. But I will say, I do have a theory though for this Kang of what they might be doing.
Okay.
I think they're going to make this Kang the Beyonder.
Which makes sense because this Kang is actually very well built. I have to say that. I definitely thought he was very menacing. I thought he was very threatening and things like that. So, and of course, you got that out of the actor because of the fact with the director, he got the best out of his actor. So that's a good thing. It's just like you mentioned that he tried going for this Avenger style kind of film, and it's just a missed opportunity because of the fact that it's trying to feel like an Avengers type movie with this one character while also trying to focus on building this universe with Kang at the same time. And Ant-Man is only one character. He's not an Avenger. So you're trying to do too many things at one time to the point where it's like an overload. And this is exactly what the director wanted. He wanted an Avenger type movie, but it just doesn't feel like a movie, Ant-Man movie in a sense. Either.
This is actually, I heard this from someone, and I can't disagree more. This was a Fantastic Four movie. This was not an Ant-Man movie.
That does make sense because of the fact of how the Fantastic Four gets their powers, how they're into another universe, and then you also have like a Doctor Doom-like character, which would be Kang, in a sense. So yeah, it definitely feels like a Fantastic Four kind of movie and everything when you look at it in that kind of aspect, though, too. So I definitely see where that person's coming from. But another thing too is like I have to agree with you on one other thing was the oversaturation of the CGI.
Oh, I got trashed so bad on Instagram for that. Oh, that was so much fun. I got so many trash comments on that one. It's not even funny.
But I'm in agreement with you because I even looked at my wife. I'm like, this gets to the point where this gets a little too cartoony. And it gets to the point where it's like, I get what they're going for. I understand what they're going for, but I want to make this universe feel as real as possible, even though it's not real. But doing a little bit of practical mixed in with some of the CGI would actually blend it in more, in my opinion, as well. And
well, I mean, yeah, picture behind me. That picture, it looks like the it's not the dome. The what's what they use for Mandalorian? Oh man, what is it?
I can't think.
What is it called? Oh man, it's called the volume. The volume. That's what it's called. Yeah, okay. Basically, you can tell it's the volume. Like when you can tell a volume by there's almost like a giant screen in front of your characters. And so in this movie, you felt like they were in the volume the entire time. It didn't feel like they were living in this world. They were just viewing this world almost. It was almost like there wasn't this filled in, like it didn't feel right, honestly. But the the thing was, whenever I came out of this movie, I liked the movie. I didn't love the movie, but then as I've sat on it longer and longer, I've had more and more and more problems with it. And sadly, I have felt that way for every Phase 4 Marvel except for Black Panther and Spider-Man, because Spider-Man
Hmm.
was incredible. But what's kind of funny is, I'll ask you this just because I find this very interesting. Why do you think most people forget about Spider-Man in Phase 4?
I think it's because of the fact that at that time you actually was the most talked about movie. During that time, you had you had Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, you had Tom Holland, of course, being in it. You had multiple Spider-Mans in one movie. You also had this one season in December where people were going to the theaters, and you also have the Sandman. You have all these other characters coming into it. So therefore, there was a reason to actually go to the theater to see this movie. And then once that movie was gone, nobody talked about it anymore. It became like very under the radar. Nobody really mentioned Spider-Man No Way Home or anything anymore. But when it was in theaters, that was everybody's highlight. That was everything that everybody was talking about. At least that's why I think it's in that kind of way, though.
Do you think it may be because they're right now, especially when it comes to social media and media in general, it's so much easier for something to be talked about more when it's hated on than it's when it's something that's loved?
Yeah, I can actually see that because it makes you look like the cool people at the table talking with your friends, having that water cooler conversation of like, hey, that movie sucked so bad. And then all of a sudden you have that one group of people talking about how bad it was. And then you have another group that actually talks about it as well. Next thing you know, you have a bunch of haters hating on this thing to the point where it actually feels cool to hate on something for the sake of hating on something. But we're not hating on some, in my opinion, we're not hating on something. We're going through it, letting it marinate a little bit of like, did I really enjoy it as much as what I wanted to? Was I overhyped for it? What was the actual problem with this film? We actually sit down and think about it for a minute. And I said to my wife, I said, and she's actually in the chat right now, but
Hello.
hey, Brandy, but I even said this to her. I said, I liked it. I thought it was an okay movie, but it also felt kind of generic in a sense.
I haven't had that feeling from like Spider-Man since the
Since
last I had in Endgame. I came out so hyped. Out of Spider-Man, I felt so hyped. I think right now, and I'm afraid we're gonna have the same emotions around Guardians. I'm really afraid we're about to have the same feelings around it because this is another director-driven story, but they're also having to throw into the quantum realm all this other stuff. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I come out of Guardian saying, "Oh, that was amazing." But I'm nervous. I'm really nervous on that one. I think the first movie that I'm not strangely as nervous on because they moved it is the Marvels. I think after Guardians, you're going to see a massive shift in Marvel because I think, for one, I think now that Iger is back, I think you're about to see a massive change because they have to.
right, and they need a home run right now. The audience is split, and as I mentioned, they're basically for us is there's like 3 for 2 because
Well, I mean, if you look at
right.
Disney as a whole, I mean, when was the last good, well-received movie other than Black Panther from Disney as a whole?
No Way Home was actually that one though too, if you think about
And
it.
that, and that was a
But it's
Sony. That was a Sony movie.
right, unfortunately. But you know what I'm saying, though. If you look at it in this big, but it's also an MCU movie, which I also put it in there as well. So that's why I kind of because they're basically playing in Marvel's sandbox, basically.
Yeah.
But those are like the only 2 films that I could say that were solid, where I actually come
Hmm.
out of the film feeling, hyped. Just like with Endgame, I felt hyped. I felt like I got something out of it with these last set of movies, I feel like they're trying to add too much into this multiverse and trying to pay attention too close to the multiverse part without focusing on their characters and
Do
letting
you
those characters grow.
do you feel like they're almost we're hearing about Secret Wars? Are you kind of almost fearful that Secret Wars might just be another Endgame? Because that's kind of the same setup they're kind of going with this idea of, oh, we've got a big bad, we have to show them at the at the beginning of Phase 5 of this Avenger level movie with Ant-Man, we're going to show the main bad guy like we saw in Avengers, and we're going to start sprinkling them in throughout different movies, and then finally we're going to build up to this big bad and his army, and then our army of superheroes has to fight his army of superheroes. Is that story a little stale?
It depends on how you do it and the delivery of what you're trying to do, in my opinion, because you can actually have that sprinkled in, but it's the delivery of the story, the direction of the story, and how you want to tell it. And if it's sprinkled in right, that's great. But if it's just thrown in together without any structure as to where the story is going and wondering how does this fit in with what they're trying to do, then it becomes where it's not cohesive anymore. It becomes misguided. And that's what I feel like, though, too. I feel like Kevin Feige's still in charge. Yes, there was some stuff that was going on behind the scenes as well with the productions and stuff like that. But they're not looking at it from a story angle perspective. They're looking at it right.
This is a harsh story. I mean, when you go into multiverses, I kind of wish they hadn't gone to the multiverse. I think it becomes so messy. I wish they had almost like grounded it, went back to more of a grounded feel for Marvel, because honestly, the multiverse idea takes away all stakes. So if someone dies, it's like, oh, well, there's this version of them in the multiverse. Let's take him, or it makes the story hard to grasp for the everyday person. And I do not think that they've explained it well enough for the everyday person, because honestly, even your massive Marvel fans are a little confused. I've seen a lot of people confused.
And another thing, though, too, Luke, that I want to mention is this, too. Like, even whenever I was wanting someone to die in this film to amp up those stakes, if, let's say, for instance, that Paul Rudd's character dies, I was okay with if he died. He had stakes. Right. And there was no stakes with this. He defeated Kang without having any superpowers or anything like that. I was fine with that battle. But it just didn't feel like it was like that battle where it's like the stakes were high to where he was going to die. I didn't really feel that way.
Well, also, if you think about it, I felt so cheated, or like almost cheapened, when at the very end of the movie, they beat Kang. You have Ant-Man the Wasp standing in the quantum realm. They're by themselves. They're looking out at the victory, and you think, okay, that they're stuck there. That's where they are. But then they just all of a sudden open up the portal from the other side and let them out. It's like, no, that takes away your stakes. There's no stakes to this movie now when you do that. It just ends.
And I think that they should have done something with the signal from that quantum realm, where basically once you destroyed that city that Kang set up, and that was destroyed, I think they should have actually, something within that city limit should have actually destroyed the signal going from that to where they're trapped inside that place now. And then you're wondering, how long are they going to be in this realm? Can she actually get the signal to go back up? Can she draw another signal from the quantum realm? Can the people inside draw a signal out and everything too? So you can actually have both sides working together in the next film, where it's basically them trying to get Scott home.
I agree. I mean, and also something I have a problem with right now with just Marvel in general. I feel like they're trying to set up this grand story, but they're also going about with different like genres within the Marvel universe. Like you've got right now with the quantum realm, with Kang and everything else. You got that side. Then you've got this multiversal issue with Doctor Strange and the incursions. Like, how does that have to do with Kang? Is Kang causing the incursions? We don't know. There's also with Shang-Chi, at the end of Shang-Chi, they're saying that the rings are calling out to someone. Then you also have the idea of the Eternals and the Celestials going to judge Earth for its wrongdoings. And if they're judged right, they can save the Earth. And then you've also got the Grounded, where you got Spider-Man and Daredevil and She-Hulk, and these characters are more on the ground level, and they don't really have anything to do with any of this. So it's like you've got so many different, like, like right now, I feel like we have spent so much time away from the Shang-Chi ring, like whatever the rings are calling out to. That's a long. There's been movies upon movies, and that storyline has kind of been dropped, and we've not really picked it up anywhere. It's weird.
It is, because it seems like to me they were trying to go in one direction, and then they're like, "Oh, never mind. We're gonna not mention about the rings. We're not gonna mention the terrestrial or anything like that either. We're not gonna mention anything about that. We're just gonna focus on our multiverse without trying to connect those together." And with that, you don't even have a cohesive way of actually putting this multiverse together. And it makes more sense for Kang to reach out to Shang-Chi using those rings than anything. And even in Moon Knight, you thought that maybe he was doing something within the Moon Knight universe. And there's no stakes with that either. It is a very messy universe right now, and they need to rebuild on what brought them to that level. I get the fact that whenever Marvel was first taking over and stuff like that, it was you actually have films that wasn't really cohesive. It was like all over the place up until Kevin Feige took over, and then we actually had some cohesiveness to it. And I feel like they need to go back to the drawing board on what made it more cohesive. Now, you mentioned about how they've sprinkled in your big bad. Now, I think that if you tease certain upcoming characters with this next phase, instead of just making them have their own shows and stuff like that, for example, you show another character, another hero, maybe their weapon or something that they use, and then you sprinkle that character into the next film, that works. Or you give them their whole movie, that works. And then if you go on ahead, and then after you set up that, you go on ahead and sprinkle in your villain that's controlling everything. And I think they need to go back to that first phase of how they did Thanos and go into that way. But I feel like they did this with Kang a little too quickly.
Oh, yeah. I think the problem with how they are doing it right now, I think in the phase like 1, 2, and 3, especially phase 1, what they did really well was they gave you contained stories that, yes, they kind of connected to the overall story, but the goal was telling you this story and watching these characters grow and change from this contained story, to watch them grow as characters. Scott did not change. This movie was all set up for the multiverse. It was all exposition, if you think about it. It was all about trying to tell the audience the multiverse is coming. That's literally what the whole movie is.
Trying to tell the audience, that they're what. Yeah, go on ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. But then also and then there's another storyline that we haven't even, I forgot to even mention this. You've also got the grounded, like, governmental story with like Captain America and the secret invasion with the Skrulls, and it's becoming too many I think the difference is we had different, like, we had the Guardians, we had Civil War, we had all these other storylines that they ended up connecting to the final story of Endgame and Infinity War, but they were contained. They weren't really continuing past that movie, their main story. But now what they're doing is they're almost saying, you've got to know you've got to watch everything, and good luck to keep up, because you're going to be everywhere.
Exactly. And we're going to touch on that in a minute. I want to go back to something you said about doing the different genres as well. And I definitely agree with you. It's always been about different genres, but never on this type of deep level of the way they're doing things. You had Doctor Strange, that was a horror movie. That was a Sam Raimi movie, which actually made more sense if they did House of M instead of doing it that way. It would make more sense doing it that way because it had the House of M logo, for crying out loud. Did you like that movie? What? Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah.
No, not really.
I was so, that movie almost made me angry, because I despise what they did to Scarlet Witch. This character arc that you are taking from WandaVision does not continue into Doctor Strange. That is not the same character.
No, and that's what I said too. I said I didn't feel like we earned that right. I didn't feel like that we earned that with Scarlet Witch at that point or anything either. And then you also have, now this is to me with Ant-Man Quantumania, I feel like this is the most sci-fi that we had out of the Ant-Man movies, which I love. I love the sci-fi element to it, but at the same time, I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to because of the oversaturation with the CGI, because of the direction that they were going in, because of those things. It took me out of the film. It just was very generic.
Well, also, if you think about it, and this, I'm having problems and this is, I know this is, you sometimes you have to put your mind on disbelief sometimes, but I don't understand time. You made time such a massive thing with Endgame. You basically said the quantum realm, he was in there for 5 minutes and it was 5 years. And that was a time thing. It made sense going into the quantum realm that affected time. This movie, they were in the quantum realm for what, a day, 2 days? And they come out immediately when they went back in. What's going on with time? Like, why
Well,
did nothing change there?
that's another thing. Okay, Scott mentions time works differently in the quantum realm. He only mentioned it one time. They come out of it, and like you said, it looked like time didn't even pass. You have that bit going on that he had at the very beginning with the guy who thought he was actually Spider-Man instead of Ant-Man, and then he remembered he was Ant-Man, and that bit didn't even land right because of the fact I'm like, wait a minute here. I thought time worked differently here. So
It,
therefore, a year or two would actually pass instead
oh,
of
it
it
would have
being
been, if they had been there a full day, you're looking 24 hours. And so it'd been like hundreds of years, like hundreds of thousands of years, because that's kind of what they said in Endgame when he went into the quantum realm for that. I think that's the problem. They made the quantum realm a plot point in Endgame. So ignoring that plot point actually confuses Endgame more. It actually hurts Endgame now. And so it hurts Endgame and it also hurts Ant-Man, which is sad. That shouldn't be that way.
no. And I also have another question. Hold on. Our busy Aussie family. Hey, how are you? How are you doing? But yeah, I do have a question for you though. Then this is something that I was thinking about during this. What did you think of Murdoch? Of that Murdoch?
Modoc was fine. I like the idea. I actually like the fact that they brought back Cross. I actually enjoyed that story arc. I thought that was really smart. I felt like that was what they were going to. I actually heard that rumor like years ago that they were going to do this. I'd actually heard it. I think there was rumors of Modoc showing up for the first Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think a lot like that. Basically, that the when Cross shrunk down, it shrunk everything but his head, and I'd heard that rumor like years ago. So I think they'd been playing this for a while. But
Right.
I I like what they did with him. I liked it up until the very end where he had such a quick character change where it's like it was weird.
Yeah, it goes from I want to kill you, and because of what you did to me, to I don't want to be a dick anymore because Scott's daughter said don't be a dick. So therefore I'm not going to be a dick anymore. And I thought to myself, that's not how it works, dude. I
That's not
mean,
that's not character
that's
growth. There was no
no,
growth.
it's very one dimensional when you look at that part. I'm like, I get you're going for a bit. I get that. And then I also didn't like the fact that Scott kept on interrupting him when he's trying to talk about how he became the way he was. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, that now you're basically being a person at the movie theaters interrupting the storyline. I'm like, no, I did not like that.
I did like the fact throughout the movie, every time someone looks at him, they're literally saying what the audience is thinking is what happened. Like they're just looking at him like, what happened to you? I and it's kind of funny because I did get trashed on this on the Instagram post, but I actually did like the CGI for Modoc because that's how Modoc looks. That didn't bother
Mhm.
me too bad. But whenever I set up the short, I put Modoc there because it was just so CGI in your face. And I just love the reaction from everyone on Instagram was so funny. Like I didn't get that anywhere else but on Instagram, and they just trashed it so bad.
Oh my god. But dude, I thought they did a good job with Murdoch. I thought that the CGI looked really good for that. You of course should need CGI for Murdoch for that,
Yeah,
because otherwise how are you going to get that person's face into it and
it's a big
everything
old head.
too?
I mean,
Right. And I thought the plot motivation for Murdoch worked because of the fact you still had that beef between Scott and him. And I thought that plot motivation from Murdoch actually works.
yeah, it made sense why he hated Scott. I mean, I would. I mean, his life is basically over. The only, but that's the thing that I wish they had actually gone into the idea for Modoc where it's like he is someone who lost everything, does not have anything left, but in this world he has power. In this world, he can actually be someone. He can be something, even though he has to be underneath Kang. He can be something. And I think the problem with this movie was it was too much. There was too many motivations. There were too many characters. I think dividing your cast between Scott and Cassie and then Hope, Janet, and Hank, splitting them up like that, I think that actually divides your story and you're having to refocus too much. Like you're having to split your time between these these
It
characters.
becomes a subplot, basically,
Oh, yeah.
because you have the main plot line of Kang. It's like, okay, so now he's coming for Scott because he knows Scott. And then you also have the other plot line of, okay, what's going to happen between Michael Douglas' character and Michelle Pfeiffer's character? How are they going to get back over to Scott? And you have that playing out and with Bill Murray and everything too. And it becomes to the point
So
where
wasted. He was so wasted.
it was too much. I'll be honest with you, the subplots just didn't work. Instead of making it into one plot line where you have all them together and you have Michelle Pfeiffer's character having this PTSD moment with Kang and trying to figure out a way to tell them about him and having that, and she does a really good job of playing the fearful character of making sure and she's self-aware of everything. But at the same time, though, I really wanted them to really focus in on how dangerous Kang really was, because we didn't see that. All they did was talk about it, and that's it. And I know that we got it out of Loki.
They did the problem with what they did was they did the what I've always heard that a good movie shows don't tell. In this movie, they told didn't show, and so Kang didn't have that impressiveness. Like he was impressive because of the actor, but the movie itself did not show that impressiveness from Kang, and so I think it made they kept telling you Kang was bad. Kang is bad. Kang is bad. It's like, but why? Why is he so bad? All he did was shoot lasers. What does and disintegrated people? What does that make him able to control the world or multiverses? Or how can he destroy multiverses? They never really explained how a multiverse is destroyed.
No, and I wish they would have actually went into different timelines with Kang and learning from his mistakes and growing from those mistakes like they said that they were going to do. And they don't deliver on that. All you see is like the end credits scene where basically you see all these other different Kangs. And then, of course, you get that one scroll at the very end, though, too. So I'm like, okay, so Kang is also a scroll. Okay, good to know. I'm glad that we got that.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that scene? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I was like, okay, that's cool. I knew that there was other Kangs. I didn't really need. I really didn't need to see all the other Kangs that were going to be that the Avengers were going to be facing.
Well, the bad part with the Kangs was it felt the three Kangs that we saw didn't feel right. They didn't give me that like impressive like air. Yeah, they didn't feel dangerous. They felt kind of like he's just kind of playing a he didn't feel lived in those characters. He didn't feel like you were afraid of them. They were almost like, all right, who's your real leader here? Like who's the leader? There has to be a leader to the Kangs, and none of them felt. And then when they started the hoop and hollering part, I was like, that's That's like Kang. Kang's not this like yelling, like hooting, like that's not him. That's not Kang. You didn't show that throughout the movie. He's this impressive, calculating, dark character. He's not going to be yelling like at a football game.
No, he's actually this dark character who stays in the shadows basically and watches things go down, and then he comes in and wipes out probably within the multiverse itself. But he's not this gladiator type character to where he does all that stuff. Now in Loki, I think that he was the most threatening was in Loki.
Oh yes.
Now that I believed. These other ones, no. They looked like they were just doing dress up at a Halloween store, and that's all he was doing was just trying on different costumes to me.
You know, I was talking about this to my friend Jonathan on the show on Monday, and we were just talking about how, honestly, I would say the Marvel TV shows have felt the most Marvel more than even the movies. I think I would say the only real bad Marvel TV show is She-Hulk. And that's about it. I think everything else has actually been pretty good.
I agree. Yeah. She-Hulk for me, I like the stuff that with the lawyers and stuff like that, with things within She-Hulk, but all the subplots in She-Hulk I didn't care for.
I thought with She-Hulk they just kind of went after the audience. They were trying to go after trolls, but the problem with that is you almost make everyone feel like a troll if they don't like the show. And you just kind of go after your audience.
Right. Let's see here. My wife asked, "What do you all think of the big head?" I thought the head actually worked. I think MODOK looked really great in it. We touched on this a little bit already, but I thought that it served the purpose. I thought that the CGI looked fantastic. How else are you going to actually put somebody into that part? So I thought it was good.
I have a question for you because this has been already reported. It looks like Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania is going to have the biggest drop for a superhero movie, making over $100 million. How bad is that?
That's really bad because here's the thing. I've always seen these movies more than once because of the rewatchability, because of the Easter eggs, because of the plot line, because of things that you missed. With this one, it's like, I don't need to go back. There's no Easter eggs, or to me, there isn't. There isn't any reason to go back into the quantum realm with this movie for me to revisit this film again. I thought I was just one and done with this film because of the fact of the missed opportunities that they had in this film. And I can understand the drop because of the fact that, nobody's talking about this now. Everybody's talking about Cocaine Bear all of a sudden. Normally, within the second or third weekend, you're still talking about a Marvel movie. For people not to be talking about this during a water cooler type conversation during the second or third week, that's not good.
No. And also, I will say this, something is going on with, I think, superhero culture in general. I think we are finally moving out of the superhero renaissance. I think you're seeing it in Marvel. You're also seeing it like there was a show I watched a lot was Flash. You're seeing the Flash show end and the Arrowverse end, and you literally see that one going out with a whimper. You're seeing a lot of these superhero franchises starting to go out with a whimper. It's very weird. It's almost like your writers don't understand their audiences anymore.
Or you're not giving the audience a chance to grow with these characters to the point where it's like, why should we care? And it's also going to show through your artwork, though, too, that you're doing as well. It's like, well, if you don't care, then why should we care? What's the reason for us to keep going back? And you also mentioned this, though, too, Luke, where, you have to watch all these things in order to watch something. It handcuffs your writers to do stuff, and that's not good. It loses the creativity of that. And my brother-in-law, if it wasn't for me going to a movie with him, he would be totally lost. He doesn't have Disney Plus, so I have to explain to him in each thing where I become like a Marvel MCU professor, where I have to connect the dots for him within an hour of driving to a movie theater, for example. And he even mentioned the fact that he was actually feeling a little bit of comic book fatigued because of everything. So I'm like, okay, so that's one person that I know of that's feeling comic book fatigued.
Well, I mean, if you also look at, you're also looking at the the new Shazam movie. It's looking like to have one of the lowest opening weekends for DC, for the DCEU ever. And it's just right now it's messy. I don't know if there was just this time where the assumption was, well, as long as we just put out a superhero movie, people are going to go watch it. I think your audiences are wanting more.
Right. I think that the audience is wanting more because the audience are smarter than what they give people credit for and stuff like that too. Our busy Aussie says my 8-year-old loves the Flash. Here's the thing. I used to love watching the Flash on the TV and stuff like that too, right? So, I've just felt that loss of connectivity because they were doing too much with the shared universes in Flash, and then the whole thing with Iris and things like that. I just didn't like it, so I pulled myself out of it. But Brandy says this movie was a big time copycat to her. So, in other words, as she said, it felt like Spy Kids. It also felt like another movie she knew and stuff like that. And I'm okay with the fact that
Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah. It also feels like a Star Wars movie, which I was okay with. This also feels like different styles of sci-fi, which I was okay with, but at the same time, it doesn't really do that good. The Go Explain got a video. It's turd and shrooms need some orange slices.
What?
I don't know.
I don't. Is that inside something or?
I know.
I don't understand that.
I don't either. So my other thing though too is okay. So I know that you had a video that said Spider-Man rumored to lead Avengers Kang Dynasty. So what was your idea in that? I'm just wondering because
my idea is basically there's two routes you could go. The fact that either A, they really dive into him having the spider sense, or B, because of the spell with Doctor Strange, there was a whole that's why there's a video. Okay. All right. I don't know. I don't understand. But so basically, what I think is going to happen in Kang Dynasty is Kang is going to change the multiverse. I think he's going to make it in his name, kind of like the House of M storyline, where Wanda made it the way that she envisioned her world to look like. And the only one who remembered anything from the past was Wolverine. I think that's going to be what you see with Spider-Man. The fact that no one remembers his name, no one remembers him. So Kang wouldn't change him because no one knows him. There's no history of Peter Parker. And so because of that, he's the only one that remembers what life used to be. I'm confused by that person, but
it's okay.
But
so anyway,
so I think like with Spider-Man, they're going to use him as the person you're watching go through the new universe that Kang has created, and he's going to have to go through and try and wake everyone up. And what it might be is he might have to share his secret identity again. He might have to say, hey, you've got to remember me. And if you remember me, then you can remember what's going on. And that might be a way to wake the Avengers up to fight Kang, to realize, no, this is not the universe we are supposed to be in. Kind of like the House of M storyline. It would take a lot of credit, a lot of inspiration from that, but it would make sense if Kang changes the entire universe.
That's actually a good theory, though, because also, too, Kang wouldn't even expect Spider-Man because of the fact he doesn't know who he is. So, therefore, you have this whole entire thing of a mystery character showing up that he wasn't even aware of because he shows up at because Kang is very self-aware of different universes. And so to not see Spider-Man show up, I think that's actually a fantastic idea. And then, of course, you also have him waking up the other Avengers, which is something that I really would like to see. Because then I think you can actually introduce like a character like Nightmare, where Kang and Nightmare team up or something, or make a deal.
Do you think that this is something I am curious on that I'd never really gotten a good answer from because I don't really know. Was the spell that Doctor Strange did with everyone forgetting that Peter Parker was or who Peter Parker was that just for the MCU's Peter Parker, or was that for every Peter Parker across the multiverse?
I
Because
think it was
that's
just
not
for
been answered.
him.
But the spell was that they would forget who Peter Parker was. There was nothing to say that it was this Peter Parker. I think it's for the
Mm.
multiverse.
That would okay. Now you got me thinking, because at that time he's actually opened the portal to the multiverse. At that time when he's casting that spell, remember? So therefore, as he's saying this, he's actually putting those details into it. And then as he's putting those details into it, you have Peter that's trying to change who can remember, who can't remember, and then it's causing this fracture of the multiverse. So yeah, I definitely have to agree with that then, where maybe it's for the multiverse, because it does make logical sense, because as he's doing this, as Doctor Strange is doing this, he's also changing it up where nobody remembers who Peter Parker is. So it could be for the multiverse.
But the I think that my only thing that does actually hurt that theory though is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, because technically that's part of the same multiverse, even though it's animated and everything else. It's still technically.
It's still technically, but also too, it's animated. So I'm thinking that they might separate the animated one from that one.
I don't know. Honestly, that's the problem with multiverse. Like you don't know what it. You almost it's hard to say for sure which is canon and which is not when it comes to like the fact that you have two different franchises across two different companies.
That's true. That's the problem that you come with, because Sony didn't have no real focus on who these characters were or anything like that. They still don't. And here's the thing: I was a big believer that the first Venom movie was a fantastic movie. I love the first Venom movie. The second one comes out, it feels like an SNL skit, and then by the time you get over, and by the time you get to the closer, which is where he's trying to destroy Woody Harrelson and stuff like that, it becomes anticlimactic to the point was like, okay, so now you guys are gonna fight. It's too late for that.
Well, the bad part is I don't know for Venom 3, they are basically setting up Toxin to show up, but the problem is like you beat your big bad, you beat Carnage in the second movie. What do you do with a third movie?
That's gonna be something that's hard on that. Let's see. Our busy Aussies family says they always seem to do great special effects. Marvel does. Then this person says, I think it was meant to be all Peter Parker, so that's why they all came and joined together. ? And then my wife said that the only thing that she really liked was the special effects. The special effects were okay, not the best of the special effects or anything like that, because we've seen some great special effects from Marvel, but this was like oversaturated with special effects to the point where it pulls me out a little bit. But we talked about that already.
Personally, I'll say this with special effects. I think you can have the best special effects in the world in a movie, but if you don't have a good enough story, it doesn't matter. I think like you look at Avatar 2, that movie did incredible. People kept going back to the theater. One, because it was a spectacle. It felt different. The special effects were incredible, but it was a good story. It was a family story. You felt the family connections. This movie could have been an incredible movie about family, and it didn't. You did not feel the family connections. You didn't feel that feeling of, oh, I have to do anything to save Cassie. It was stated, but you didn't feel it. I also think them changing actresses for Cassie was a bad idea. I think that actually hurts the movie, everything, because the more you find out about it, there was no reason for recasting that character. They just wanted someone more famous.
Right. Yeah. Okay, drink the goo. Oh yeah, drink the goo. That's actually the part that part was used in the movie itself.
Oh. Okay.
Remember whenever they first get there and Cassie tells them to drink the goo so the way they can understand what the other life forms are saying?
Yeah, that makes more sense. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I felt like this movie was trying to do too many things and failed at all of them. it didn't succeed in the mission of the story. And I do I do want to see different something. I want Marvel to redirect, and I think they will. I really do. I think with 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 Iger back and what they're saying about Marvel, what they're saying about the whole strategy for Marvel, I think it's going to be good in the long run. I hope.
I hope so too. Because I'm rooting for a comeback for them. I really am. And, if this movie is successful, the other comic book movies will be successful too. Like other stuff within the Marvel Universe or DC Universe. I'm rooting for both of them. You know what I mean? Because I love both universes. I just wish that they would actually find something more cohesive. And you're welcome. I'm glad that you joined us, our busy Aussie family. I do appreciate you. Please come back again. But yeah, but here's the thing that I liked about this movie in a way. I'm glad that we got the villain from the first Ant-Man movie in this movie instead of them killing him. So that's something I'm really was happy about.
Even though they killed him in the end.
Yeah, but
I mean,
still,
they still killed him. He still ends up dead.
At least they waited until the second movie to kill him and not the first one. So, it's a positive, but yet a negative, but still.
Kill him. I mean, that's the bad part with Marvel. They just don't want to leave the villain alive. And it's like, stop it. Like,
exactly.
Loki is not the only best villain. There are other good villains. Stop killing everybody.
But as far as this movie goes,
stop it.
But as far as this movie goes, it was an okay movie. It was just generic. It was not something that was a great spectacle, like you mentioned. Also, too, another movie that wasted their time with more special effects was Jupiter Ascending with the Wachowski sisters. Yeah. Like they spent more money on their special effects versus them doing a plot. So
that movie was so bad. That I mean, it like the ending was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was. I will say a movie that I revisited, like I was rewatching some the other day, and it's from the same directors you just mentioned, but that did tell an incredible story with interesting special effects. Was Speed Racer. Have you ever seen that movie?
I've seen it, but it wasn't something that I really liked.
Go back and rewatch it. Go back and rewatch it. When it came out, no one was ready for that type of animation. You go back now, I think you would actually really enjoy it because it was probably the most ahead of its time movie I've ever seen. The animation is so different. Okay.
Yeah, that was my question. Was like, was it because the film was probably ahead of its time? Is why I didn't like it the first time whenever I saw it, or was it because it was just a bad movie? So I'm glad that you cleared that up.
It honestly, it really was. It takes a second for you to get used to the animation because they do such really different things with it. But it's a gorgeous movie. I mean, just a gorgeous movie to watch. It's so, the story wise, it's family. You literally see these family connections. You see some really corny dialogue in some points, but it works because it's through the lens of a family. And I think if you are telling a family story like this movie should have, is that I really like a movie that is able to show the family bonds, because family is truly one of the most important things that you can show in a movie. And because everyone has a form of a family, and so you can build that connection. This movie, that's why I think this movie failed, was because you didn't have those familial bonds that you wanted. Like, you should have had Cassie and Janet dealing with the fact that basically Janet is like a second mom to her now. What does that look like? Why now you got Hank and Hope, who are basically grandparents to Cassie, who Cassie really doesn't know them. I mean, she didn't grow up with them. They were dusted for 5 years, and now they're acting like grandparents. Like, that's really interesting familial that you could have addressed, but they kind of skip all of it.
No, it's like they expected us to make it work because they wanted it to work. And that doesn't work because, like you said, it's been 5 years since that she even saw her father. He missed out on 5 years of her life. She doesn't even know who these characters are. even if you look at the second Ant-Man movie that came out, there was no introduction to the casting in them for her to be able to make that connectivity of, oh, this could be a potential grandma or grandfather to me in my life because it's important to Scott. No. Instead, they go on the anticipation of the fact that they expect that from us to believe it, and it doesn't deliver.
Yeah, it's sad that there's so many nitpicks that you can make of this movie. I enjoyed the movie. I had fun with it. I think it's going to be so forgettable. Like, we'll forget about it in a couple weeks. Once the next big movie comes out, we'll forget about this movie. Once Guardians comes out, we'll forget about this one for sure. I want to see more from Marvel. I really do. I want to see Marvel really kick some butt. But we'll see.
Yep, we'll see. But yeah, overall, movie's very generic, very forgettable. Matter of fact, we actually have John Wick coming out next month. We have a couple of other movies. So this movie's going to be like one and done and gone by the time the next month comes rolling over. So with that being said, that's going to be it as far as our review goes. But Luke, do you have anything coming out as far as your channel goes or anything like that? Where can people reach you at?
Check out the Galaxy Geek channel. On Monday, we will be doing a live show. We'll probably be talking about the new news about them doing more Lord of the Rings movies. What's that going to look like? We're probably going to talk more Marvel stuff coming up. We're going to do some previews for The Mandalorian because that's coming out this Friday or this Wednesday, which I cannot wait. We'll do all the other movie news that's coming out. So we're going to talk, discuss. You're going to see me that I've updated stuff on our channel again because I always do because I have problems. And so we'll be doing all that. You'll be seeing shorts from us all the time. I'm trying to keep out having at least 1 to 2 to 3 shorts a day. Try and build up our channel again. Just trying to build up our community. That's a big thing too. Like, I've kind of stepped back from doing interview shorts and doing more reactions and us talking because I want to build our community. That's kind of the goal of the channel. We grew super quickly, but it didn't grow our community. It just grew our subscriber numbers. And so I've kind of went back and kind of re-looked at that and decided to go a different route.
Okay. And guys, you guys can go on ahead and check out our after show for The Last of Us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, when we have those shows. I do have a couple more things that I'm going to be trying to do. I'm going to do some more shorts, upload some more stuff. And thanks again, Luke. I do appreciate this. This has been a great. Oh, thank you so much, Jamie. As a matter of fact, Jamie's actually on my after show for The Last of Us. She
is great. She's just awesome.
I love her spunk. I really do.
I'm still salty that she interviewed Superboy himself. So mad. That's so great.
There's a lot of interviews that she does that I really wish that I could just be in the background and just watch her interview somebody. But it is what it is. But you know what, Jamie? Thanks again for being so supportive. Because I'll pay you guys later for these compliments. But anyways, thanks again, Jamie. Thank you for everybody inside the live chat. We do appreciate it. And always until next time, guys. Bye-bye.